the last section we talked about not freaking out if you've got water in your crawl space. The other thing that we really wanted to talk about as well is that if you have water in your crawl space for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, as long as you're paying attention to it and making sure that you're not getting a lot of extra evaporation, that should be a reasonable amount of time. What mold needs is it needs a consistent environment, and if that environment's constantly changing, you maybe do have a little bit of air movement down there, but you're not blowing fans on wet dirt, that little bit of air movement will help change that environment to help prevent mold as well. So we've talked about not freaking out, monitoring your crawl space, we've talked about pumping your crawl space, and now we're going to talk about what do you do when the water's gone. So after the water's gone, that's when we would recommend having our company come out and take a look and do a little health inspection and talk about what happens or if there's anything that needs to be replaced. Obviously, if you have the blanket insulation that hangs on the side of your crawl space walls and that got wet, that will need to be replaced. And that's why we're recommending people to spend money towards fixing the things that already got damaged rather than trying to spend money to pump out water that's going to go down on its own anyways. So taking care of that blanket insulation and then your vapor barrier. So with the vapor barrier, if it's still in place and it floated in there really nicely, or maybe even some water got on top of it, which is it's going to happen, what I do is I do it just like folding up a tablecloth. That you can get one person on each end and you lift the vapor barrier up, let the water drain off of the vapor barrier, and then you lay it back down, paying attention to making sure that you're completely covering the dirt in your crawl space. You don't want to have any just slivers right on the corner of exposed dirt, because that's where the evaporation can happen and cause malodors or evaporation that could cause mold later on in the year. So we talked about pumping, insulation, vapor barriers, and just making sure you don't have any condensation that's formed in any other areas of your crawl space. If you are getting high humidity in your crawl space, the first place that you're going to notice it is on the cold water pipes, because that's the coldest surface down there. And if you are seeing condensation and dripping coming off of your pipes, that's an indicator that you need to get a little bit of fresh air down there and during this time of flux. But we really wouldn't recommend leaving your crawl space wet for over a month, and just making sure to continue to monitor that, and then having a professional like Buffalo Restoration come out and give you a health checkup and set you up with a plan of action for after the water has succeeded.